Hello, and welcome to 6 Degrees from Cannabis. I'm your host, Tori Rerick, PharmD and holistic healer. Each episode features a candid conversation about how connecting with the cannabis plant has enhanced an individual's wellness journey. Here to honor the plant, talk about healing, and have fun. Despite being laughed at by her peers in pharmacy, today's guest stayed true to her vision of a career in the cannabis industry when honestly answering the question of where do you see yourself in 10 years during a job interview. This conversation with Dr. Kovacs highlights how pharmacists can fill a void in the cannabis industry and how the most difficult work moving the plant forward in the field of medicine is reversing the ingrained stigma. Keep listening if you're a healthcare professional or patient who answers yes to Dr. Kovacs' question, are you open and willing to accept the gift of cannabis? Let's go to the show. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we have on Dr. Jennifer Kovacs, who earned her doctorate degree in pharmacy from Nova Southeastern University in 2002. She has worked in many aspects of pharmaceutical care, including retail settings and management, hospital, long-term care, hospice, and pain management. She's currently licensed in Arizona, Florida, South Carolina, but actively practicing in Greenville, South Carolina, and is the founder and owner of Healing Leaf Health and Wellness, LLC. Her mother's late life diagnosis of SLE lupus and father's degenerative disc disease with stenosis fuels a passion for treatment modalities outside of Western medicine and to pursue alternative options and educate herself and others. Dr. Kovacs is an advocate for cannabis education, legalization, and responsible use with intention. Welcome, Dr. Jennifer.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me and thanks for the space.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here.
This is wonderful that we've been connected. I've been so excited to meet more and more pharmacists on the scene who are doing the good work for cannabis. And I'll start off by pulling a card from my highly inspired Oracle deck, the Follow Your Heart Oracle deck. And I'd love to hear about your connection with the card's topic and that with cannabis. And so the one we've gotten today for your episode is Planted in Power. How has cannabis helped you plant in your power?
I feel like my power is now freedom. I'll have to say, being a pharmacist for 20 years in traditional medicine, the burnout is real.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for options with our life, more options to help other people. And, the independence that the plant gives you to be in all different aspects of the cannabis industry, it's freeing. And I really like that opportunity and just being able to meet all different types of people from all different walks of life and all different parts of the industry. But there's such a general pull back to the plant, which is healing. So whatever part of the industry people are in, I really feel like there's still a common goal. You can be a pharmacist, but there's still always that, well, are you a hospital pharmacist or a retail pharmacist, or do you do mail order or, R&D? And everybody has their own definitive path, and, you don't cross over as much. I feel like there's a lot of crossover in this industry, and I really like that and enjoy that.
There's so much in what you said that I'm resonating with. You started off with burnout, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I burned out in like 1 year of practice. But in that relationship, cannabis is what helped me see it through and what got me through the path to the other side of where I am now and being in the industry, and also my personal health. And then also how you were saying, how cannabis just gives us options. That was part of why I felt really stuck with pharmacy is I continued to dispense medications and not see people really improve in the ways that I expected them to be able to do. And so I feel like cannabis is one of those modalities that either paired with pharmaceuticals or on its own or whatever, does exactly what you're saying, gives you options to plant in your power and take your power back as a patient. So very cool. Thank you for that perspective. I'd love to hear what your original perception of cannabis was and if it has shifted.
So absolutely. So, I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, like the whole Reagan, just say no, the frying pan, the egg, that whole
Mm-hmm.
image is probably burned in my head forever. Those commercials play like every 5 minutes. Um,
Wild.
so, and what's interesting is because it was such a pop culture type thing, right? And that really shapes, especially that age, what is good and bad, what is expected of us and what is not. And, it wasn't a gray area. It was, a very black and white issue, like drugs are bad. And, the marijuana, cannabis is a gateway drug. And, if you go down this path, there's no turning back. Right. And, your fate is sealed and you're going to be unsuccessful and you're going to be hanging out with bad people. And that was the impression I got, because I was between 5 and 15 years old at that point. So that commercial was airing on the regular. And that was also the parental, type influence you got, if you will. But to be honest with you, I grind now more in the cannabis space than I ever did as just your, typical pharmacist working an 8 to 10 hour shift, or whether I was on call or not. I put in more hours now than I ever did, as a professional pharmacist, practicing pharmacy. You show up, you do your shift, you monitor what you're supposed to monitor, you help your patients, and then you come home, right? Well, cannabis isn't that simple. Like the advocacy, the education, it seems to never stop. So I feel like I work a lot harder in this space than I do as a pharmacist, just, doing what a pharmacist does.
Right, breaking those stereotypes. We get it done.
Yeah, it's a full-time job.
Yeah. So what was that shift? Like, where did that come from where you were like, okay, this is bad, bad, bad. And okay, I can like touch this. I can talk about this. Cause that's something I felt like I couldn't even talk about cannabis with my patients. We even had CBD on the shelves and I was still like, I don't know.
It's a shame that we're all so controlled by media, by print, and what people in power, in positions of power, whatever they want to disseminate to the masses. For some reason, we are not told to do our own investigating anymore. Don't challenge the authority, right? Don't fight the power. Just stay, in the mass, stay in the huddle, and we'll all be safe together. And, some things are going to work for some people and some things aren't, but don't go outside everybody's comfort zone. Don't rock the boat, right? And it's when you start doing your own research and saying, you know what, well, this isn't working for me. And I'm not trying to cause a big problem here. I'm not trying to go rogue on society, but there has to be other options, right? There has to be a better way. Not everyone works for everyone. Kids in school, everyone doesn't learn the same way. So, and I heard an interesting, I heard a saying that I love recently, and it's, even broken crayons color. And I love that because, everyone has use, everybody has value. And what society tells us is that, well, if you have something wrong with you, you're broken, and hopefully Western medicine can fix you. And if you can't, then you're just stuck. And see, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I don't see why, society gets to decide if you're broken or not, or how much. Like you have no value anymore. And I don't see that at all. So especially if cannabis is an option for you to use and it helps you do better. It helps you be a better person. It helps you be a better, grandparent, parent, employee, whatever the situation is. I don't like the fact that society gets to dictate what we can or cannot do within our own mindset, how we want to pursue our wellness, especially when the plant has proven over and over again that it does have value. It is a tool in the toolbox, and people are utilizing it with great success. The industry is moving so fast that the studies and the science can't always keep up with it or explain why it's working. But even anecdotally, we know it is.
Right.
We see the results. So I don't feel like it's going anywhere, even if things, whether federal legalization happens, or, how soon that's going to happen or not happen. It's almost like the cat's already out of the bag. People have been using it for, and harvesting and using for like over a millennia, right? So, it's not going to stop, whether it's legal or not. In most states it is. I happen to be in still a state that is, a prohibition state. So that's a struggle when I see the entire country like moving forward, and here I am like in the time warp.
Right.
So, and that makes it challenging for some patients as well, but they're also becoming medical refugees as a result of that.
Exactly.
That's what happens. And, I think people are starting to wake up a little bit. When they have a family member or themselves or a loved one that has tried it and had success, they're much more willing to move forward. Or you're someone in the medical space and you say, well, you know what? I just can't discount the mounting scientific evidence that's out there, which is, and I don't know how you feel as a pharmacist, but I know when I started really researching it and understanding from a medical purist point of view, right? Because it's a plant and we know other medicines, 75% of our pharmaceuticals are plant derived and then made in the synthetics and whatnot. So this is another plant. If we stop looking at it as the no and start investigating it as the, well, why not? And then it makes a difference. So to me, that's where my journey began, just investigating the plant and reading what I could read. And, then you start reading about, when the endocannabinoid system came about. And now there's these receptors. And, look at this. There is science to back it up. So even healthcare professionals really can't discount what's happening. Maybe they can explain why. And that's the holdback and that's the pullback from them. But, there's no discounting, it's medicine. They may not understand everything because it is a botanical, but to me, the evidence is there. And it's just a matter of when everyone gets on board and starts doing the more difficult work, which is the acceptance, because now they have to explain like why for the past 80 years or more of prohibition, why has it been off the table? Why have we let all these people suffer this long? And I think they're going to have to answer those harder questions.
Definitely. But it starts with the thinking for yourself and the researching for yourself. That's like what's tying it in is through all of these examples, like just follow your gut, follow the plant. Like that's what I've been doing. I follow the plant and she guides me and she guides us to wellness. I want to talk about, your community, your family. How does this plant serve you?
I feel like the plant actually serves everybody, right? All mammals. It's just, are you open and willing to accept the gift, right? Are you willing to try it? And what happens is most people get to a point of desperation. Those of us where the stigma has been ingrained, as to not use it, don't go there. Cannabis is not an option. Once you've reached that level of desperation, you are willing to try and you are open. And you're pretty much well, I don't care what society thinks of me. I don't care, even some people, I don't care if it's illegal. If it'll help me, if it'll help my relative, it'll help my, friends and family, I'm on board. So as far as serving me and my family, it was my mom's lupus, and my mom's a retired RN. My mother the only thing she's ever done is smoke cigarettes. I mean, if you're going to think of something bad for her health, never touched an illegal substance in her life. Not a drinker of alcohol. So when she has to take 12 different medications every day just to be able to get up and walk and try to function, and she's only 67, and she was a late life diagnosis, like in her early 50s. So who knows how long she actually, lupus was actually starting to destroy her organs before somebody actually gave her the correct diagnosis, right? Because that's usually it's in your, late teens, early 20s. So for her to have to start taking the steroids and the Plaquenil and, she takes Lyrica and a bunch of other things. And, with one autoimmune thing comes other autoimmune disorders. Right. She also has the rheumatoid, the Sjögren's, and then she's got macular degeneration. She's a lot going on. So for the RN in her to tell me and say, look, I'm in pain every day. And she's, not a whiner because she's a nurse. And we know that most people in the medical profession always take care of themselves last. They take care of everybody else and they just wait. And she's tired of taking all these pills. She just said, I have to take them to get out of bed. I have to take them to walk. I have to, everything is wrapped into these pills. And she said, and I'm still hurting.
Right.
She said, if they're supposed to work, why is this happening? So her and I, this is about 5 years ago, just started researching CBD for her.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is, she ordered random brands off the internet. I mean, she was trying to go on the website, do some research. And, we all know that CBD products have changed drastically even in the last 5 years. So, I went over to her house one day after work, and she had pushed these 5 bottles of tincture towards me and said, okay, pharmacist daughter, I don't know what all's in these or what my dose or how I'm supposed to take them. But I can tell you that these 2 work. This one tastes like dirt. And, these 2 do nothing for me.
Yeah.
So tell me what the difference is. What am I looking at? And I started looking at the labeling. I was looking at the bottles. I was smelling them. And, at that point, the labeling wasn't even as good as it is now.
Right.
So I could not really give her a good answer. And then she looked at me and she's like, well, now you know what you need to do. Mm-hmm. She said, there needs to be a brand out there that, it's clear. How many milligrams are they actually getting? So they know how much to take, the lab testing, all of that. Now, like I said, all that labeling has changed even a lot, per the FDA in the last few years. And a lot of companies, the ones that were in it 5 years ago may not even still be around now, right? Mm-hmm. But the ones that are doing their due diligence and they're good brands and they're following good manufacturing processes, they're still here. Mm-hmm. But she was kind of my muse. That's what inspired me to, well, if other educated people are having these issues choosing a brand and how to use it, that's obviously a need, right? There's a void there. So, I thought, okay, I can step up and fill this void as a pharmacist. I can look at people's medication history and their list and know, is this really for them? Because that's what I did for, my parents. Are you even a candidate for this? Mm-hmm. And that would be the only problem with going into like a health food store or, when people buy it from a gas station or Bed Bath & Beyond or wherever they might be selling products. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes even a dispensary. You are literally at the education level of the person you're buying from. So, your own knowledge base, you have to be willing to expand upon it and not just, it's not like going to your doctor, like, okay, here, take this. And if you don't feel better in 2 weeks, well, call me, we'll run some more tests. Cannabis doesn't work that way. It's very self-directed medicine. It's very self-directed care. Now, if you do have someone to guide you along that journey, that's great. Mm-hmm. But, there's so many, now you've got wellness coaches and med tenders and, pharmacists, cannabis clinicians, cannabis nurses. There's so many people in this space. So it's like, okay, well, who do I pick? Who do I go with? Okay. It's at the end of the day, it's who's accessible, right? Mm-hmm. Who's the person in front of you that you're talking to when you're trying to buy your product? That's who you're relying on. You're not actively seeking out the most, the guru of medication. It's whoever is in your circle. And whether that education is good or bad, that's what you're getting. So, again, it's very, you have to be your own advocate. It's very self-directed. And, you have to do your research on whatever products you're wanting to use or take. That's imperative.
Definitely. It comes down to your own research. And then that's also, encouragement for the medical personnel that might be listening to this to do your research too, because the people are going to start looking at you. They're going to pop up on your Facebook Messenger and say, hey, random question. And you're like, this is not random. You're coming to me because you trust me and I'm supposed to know about this if I'm going to support people's health. So yeah, everyone has to do their research. It's time to look at the plant. That's what's happening. She's like, all eyes on me. Great. And so you've touched on it, how you serve the plant. You started your company. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So yeah, I started the company for my mom and, again, it's like, okay, well, where do I start? Right. It's not as if I'm not a plant touching person, right? Again, you need to know, okay, well, where is my level of expertise? Where do I fall in the industry, right? Am I a grower? Am I a processor? Am I an educator, an advocate? There's so many different areas to be in, because the plant is all these things. It's nutrition, agriculture, cosmetics, food, textiles, construction. Where do you fit in? So once you find out where you fit in, which for me, it was the education portion, right? The drug interaction portion, the dosing portion, because that's where I am, in my career and in my knowledge base. So that's what I stuck with. Then I had to do the digging of, okay, well, how do I want it grown? Where's the best? Where's it coming from? Where it's the best? What's legal in my state? Like what can I actually provide to people? So all those factors come into play. And then what do I want my products to do? What do I want in my product line? How big of a product line do you want? And how are they going to touch people? I can remember I didn't even have a gummy in my product line up until a year and a half ago. And the only reason I added one was because that's what everybody seems to want.
Right, exactly.
And my problem with a gummy was I said, if everything's supposed to be intention and pure and real products, I was like, I don't want to throw a sugar-laden gummy to my diabetic patients, right? So I had to find someone that would make me, like a non-sugar coated gummy with, but it still has to be flavored or, it has to have something in there. So is it going to have fruit juice and pectin or organic tapioca syrup? Or am I giving them, like the blueberry ring with like I said, rolled in sugar? And I just didn't agree with that. I thought it was counterintuitive for a pharmacist to be selling a sugar-coated gummy. Yeah, they taste wonderful because they're rolled in sugar. But that didn't make sense for me to have those
people to really do it as medicine. If we're directing the narrative in this way, it's like, what?
Right. So I did, I do have gummies, but I had specific requirements for them. And it's just interesting why, I don't know why, I'm still trying to figure out the why of maybe it's just, I think it's the misnomer that, oh, well, a gummy is safe, right? Children eat gummy vitamins, because their gummies are everything now. Right. So I think that it is medicine. It's just a different dosage form. And, practitioners may see it that way, or most of them frown upon it because of the sugar content and all the other things that are in a gummy. But, again, if you formulate the gummy properly, it can be done. It's another tool, whether it's a soft gel or some other edible or a tincture or, some other.
And that might be just, the introduction for someone too. We just have to meet people where they're at. If they're not going to take the cannabis because it's not in gummy form, like let's meet them there and go from there.
They definitely get braver. You have patients that will just start with a topical, or they're already there. They're like, I'm in a lot of pain. And I was like, well, topical's fine. What are you comfortable with? Are you comfortable with the tincture? Because, if someone comes in with more of an arthritis type pain, a topical, it's going to help, but it's very, very short lived. It's not really treating the inflammation from the inside. So it depends how aggressive, and you have to feel them out, how aggressive do they want to be, where are they at? And then sometimes, depending on where they start, they will add on the other one because they realize like, hey, I'm benefiting from this.
Right. Totally. I've seen that. So how do you educate? Like, what's your platform? How are you talking to people, especially being in South Carolina?
So interestingly enough, my first invitation to speak was at a senior church group.
Oh,
yeah. And that kind of blew my mind. But what I find is they're more receptive when you go to their space. People are not going to come to an SC normal meeting or, they have to already be in the space, right? They already have to be an advocate. They're already pro-plant. We're trying to convert people who aren't pro-plant already. And you have to go to their area. That went really, really well. And I think when you're explaining it from a medical standpoint as to why it works, they get it. And then, you'll inadvertently always have that one person in the back of the room that when you're all done speaking, they'll raise their hand and they had a mother, brother, cousin, sister, fish, whatever, that ended up taking these products. And they're like, yeah, they had seizures. Now they just use this. It really works. It does help. And then it's their peer group saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then that has a huge impact. So, and then from, the church group, it went to like the men's, like a Sierra club, to a woman's group locally. And then Furman University, which is like a liberal arts college here in South Carolina. They have what's called the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which these professionals pay to be a part of. And they do webinars on just about every topic. So they actually had me do an intro to hemp and CBD, and it was an elective, and they said it was their most highly attended elective ever.
Wow. Amazing.
It was like over 85 people in a Zoom call. And it was, and they're all retired professionals, and they all had questions. And it was interesting at the very end, one of them was a nurse practitioner. One of them was a retired, and one of them was a retired neurologist. I mean, I didn't know who was on the Zoom call. Right. They were just listening to me. And then I didn't find out till the end when they started asking me questions. I mean, I had everyone from real estate agents to, like I said, neurologists, PAs. Oh, yeah, my daughter works for the agency that goes in the field and tests the hemp. She's absolutely 100% right. So I was like, oh, well, thanks for the backup.
Yeah, I need some validation. Thank you. I was actually going to ask, like, what's been the receptivity of your peers? Not that you're doing it for that, but I think that was just one place where I felt so stuck originally, was this like blanket of professionalism. And now things are shifting and we're opening up. But I'm wondering how you stay planted in your power, or how you have as you were emerging in this industry, and everyone on like the pharmacist sidelines watching and being like, what's going on?
Oh, when I was working at the hospital, when I was actually started reading books on CBD, and I was literally laughed at by my peers. And I mean, when I say laughed at, I mean like, being made the brunt of jokes, and, and getting the side eye, and them automatically thinking I was just some kind of, big stoner in college or something, which could have been nothing further from the truth. Right. Mm-hmm. It's just interesting. The stigma that, oh, well, if you're pro cannabis, then you're a party girl, or, mm-hmm. No, that's not it at all. If anything, it was kind of like the exact opposite for me, because, when you're going to pharmacy school, you certainly aren't dabbling with, Schedule I substances.
No.
So you wouldn't have gotten into pharmacy school. Right. So it was very interesting. I actually think I may have lost a few jobs. When I went on job interviews and they said, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And I said, I see myself working in the cannabis industry when it becomes legalized. Mm-hmm. And the looks I got, and I'm pretty sure I shot the interview. I mean, looking back, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I just had so much conviction, and I just knew that, it's a healing entity. The history is there, whether we choose to turn away from it and ignore it or embrace it. That's a very individual decision. But now with so many people, benefiting physically, emotionally, spiritually, and they're using this tool because our traditional Western medicine has failed them. So they want options. So, we're still, again, we're waiting for, and it has to be U.S. studies now. I mean, the rest of the world has been studying the plant, but for some reason here in the United States, that's not okay. We don't want to see the Israeli, Australian, Canadian study. We have to do our own. Right. And I don't, and that's with all drugs, right? So I have a problem with that whole dichotomy anyway. Mm-hmm. But again, it all starts for us here with, descheduling. And, as far as I know, yes, the states will still control. But I mean, we've only got 9 states left, right? So we're still pushing for those remaining 9 states to just kind of get with the program.
Yeah, and it will continue beyond that. It will keep going to make this whole system better and the access better. And, we can talk about expungement and all of that, but there's a lot to do, and it's about being planted in the power. And I love what you said about pretty much returning to our roots. Like, this is our history. This literally returning to the roots, returning to the soil, returning to plants. Like, this is where we came from. This is the foundation. And so even though it seems so out there to some people, you had the vision, and the vision was actually looking at our roots and going back a little bit and just trusting that.
Well, I mean, if penicillin was discovered from, Ian Fleming eating a moldy sandwich, you can't deny the fact, okay, well, why wouldn't this plant also have some value? It does. And it's not just right. And it's not just this plant that has cannabinoids in it. It's other plants, right? Hops and, even rhododendrons. I mean, we're not doing anything for rhododendrons right now, but, and echinacea, it's not a true, they're, cannabinomimetic, right? Similar action. And people have no problem buying echinacea when they don't feel good. But cannabis is still really bad. And it just doesn't make sense. The stigma has to come away, descheduling, the criminalization of it, the fact that the plant is just clouded in all this mystery and vilified for, all these years. Slowly we're peeling back the layers. And, luckily, I guess when you have people with some, when you have Sanjay Gupta saying, CBD is helping people, and you have all these celebrities coming into the space, and personalities, and again, it's pop culture, right? So is pop culture going to end up what they did bad in the 80s? Are we going to fix it now? And it's possible, and then when you have the medical community kind of backing it up, the people who are really, really closed-minded start just kind of like maybe turning their head a little bit to the light. Just let a crack in. Just like look at a peek. Just give it a chance. Let's see. And the point is, you still have the choice to not use it,
right?
But don't make it not an option for other people who are open to it.
Completely.
That's the whole point of being alive, right? I'm supposed to be able to make my own choices and do what's best for me. So I'm against people controlling other people's options and other people's decision making. To me, freedom is a big part of it. having the choice, letting the doctor and you have the conversation, if you're not in an adult use state, to be medicated. And what's happening in adult use states as well, people are, if they're comfortable enough, they will medicate themselves.
Definitely.
So, and it's, it's not about the high. And that's the question you always get asked, right? The first thing, boom.
Definitely.
Is this going to make me high? Well, what is your intent? If that's your intent and you're in a state that allows it, okay, well, okay, that's your intent then. But I would say the majority of people, that's not what it's about. They are treating with intention. They consider it a medicine. And just like with any other medicine, you take enough to medicate and that's all. Or they're chasing, because of the lack of education and the knowledge and the industry standards, they're trying to figure out what that is.
Totally. And because we like to label and put names on things and have these diagnoses, like even my own relationship with cannabis, as I'm getting deeper into my own personal healing and traumas, I'm like, oh, I thought I was utilizing cannabis as adult use. And now I'm seeing I cope with my anxiety in this way. I touch my PTSD in this way. And there's not always the language for that, but it's about that intuitive feeling. And as you were saying, people know what's right for them. And it is that self-direction. What's the question you get asked the most about cannabis, and what's your answer?
Probably just the fact, they're going down the bad path. Like, I mean, for me in South Carolina, I only have Farm Bill compliant products. So that's, less than the 0.3% THC. And I knew I was in the Bible Belt when I started this. So initially my product line was all 0%, no THC.
Wow, okay.
I added on a full spectrum. I have one full spectrum tincture now. And I actually now sell more of that than the other tinctures, unless it's to athletes or, animals. But, because they do get more benefit. I mean, now we both know that, 0.3% really isn't doing much medicinally. Like if you want medical cannabis, 0.3% is not where it's at for you. But, baby steps. I'm in one of those states. But, people do get more benefits from it. But it's number one thing is, well, am I going to be intoxicated? Am I going to be impaired? And the answer is, you're not. And then I get the eyebrow raise. And it's almost like, But then the good news is, you have a couple initials behind your name and you are a pharmacist. You immediately then you get the patient level of trust, right?
Yes.
Because they're like, okay, well, she can't, she wouldn't be saying this. She can't, she has a license to, I take an oath to do no harm. And that's kind of like what you have to remind them. I'm not going to, that's what we do, right? We keep other we keep your meds in line. We're looking out for you. We're on your team. Mm-hmm. That is what we get paid to do. I'm not influenced by big pharma or, what doctors want to do. If anything, we're making sure the doctor doesn't miss something mm-hmm. or overprescribe or underdose or, there's a side effect or, hey, we've all caught an allergy or two in our careers. It just happens. And that's the whole purpose. So for me, the plant, it's the same purpose. It is another medication. And I think people are realizing that, hey, this cannabis, it's doing more for me than these 5 pills combined. Mm-hmm. And as they start dropping off medications and they're down to this one thing, they're, it's like, holy cow. Then the light bulb goes off mm-hmm. for them inside their head. And that's the amazing part. The best part of what I do is, the patients try it and they are taking like a leap of faith for them, right? This is a huge step, but they take that step because they're that desperate. When they come back in a month or they call me in 2 weeks and they say, I feel great, or, I'm sleeping, I don't have as much pain, I have more energy during the day. Hey, my doctor, I'm titrating, I'm getting off my Depakote or whatever else it is, or I don't need my sleeping pills at night anymore. And they feel empowered. So as the patient, for once in their life, they are controlling their own journey and their own destiny. Right. And that empowerment for them. And the fact that it's working, because they're not going to keep coming to you if they feel like the product isn't helping them. I mean, people can only argue placebo effect for so long. Mm-hmm. And I have had patients that have tried it. They've done it like textbook for a month and they didn't get any relief. And that can happen too.
Totally.
But hey, at least they gave it a shot, right?
I'm finding it so interesting how people that question, will this get me high? And then you explain the intoxication and that all of that, but that never seems to come up when they're picking up their controlled substances or their Lyrica, or it's just interesting, again, the stigma and the perception of the plant. You're like, I have to counsel you on this very important part about operating heavy machinery and driving, and they're kind of like waving it off.
Oh, they don't want to talk to you. Yeah. And they would get angry. How many times were you cursed out because you were doing what the law requires us to do, right? Which is, with a new prescription or, adding on, more controlled substances to the mix. What was the trifecta? It was, Soma, Xanax, and and I think it was Lortab at the time, which is now Norco because of the Tylenol thing. But they're taking the whole trifecta of narcotics, and that's okay. They just jumped in their car and they're going down the road, and no one questions that. We're more concerned about DUIs with cannabis and alcohol, but prescription meds somehow got they get a big pass, mm-hmm. and they're just as impairing, mm-hmm. If not more so, because I don't know many. I can't speak for I can't really say in South Carolina because, using cannabis, we don't have a medical program. But, my experience in college was nobody wants to go anywhere. I don't see people jumping in their vehicles.
They'll just stay home.
As opposed to, taking all their Adderall or Xanax or whatever the case may be. There's a misnomer that, because it's a pharmaceutical, it's safe. Mm-hmm. It came from my doctor. Mm-hmm. It's safe. It can't be abused. And we all know that's wrong, right? Because it's called the opiate epidemic.
Right.
So it's just interesting. I'm glad that there's been this return to homeopathic, looking at plants, looking at the compounds within the plants, mm-hmm. trying to figure out what works for us best and not necessarily be content with a monotherapy in a pill. That means I have to take 12 monotherapies for one outcome.
Completely.
Instead of a pleiotropic plant. So I'm definitely excited for what the future holds for the industry and practitioners, and helping the people that are looking for the help and helping them be the best advocates, because it's the people who get helped by the plant. It's their stories that people listen to.
Mm-hmm. What's your clientele like with your line and with your education?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I have parents that are not using stimulants in their children for ADHD. I don't like to go lower than say 7 or 8, just because, when you have a 7 or 8 year old, they're already around, 60 to 80 pounds. So, the dosing isn't as tricky. And, in my opinion, most of them are getting like a 10 milligram gummy, for the focus and the sleeping. And then I have canines. I work with a dog trainer. So when she's retraining these animals, whether it's aggression or separation anxiety, and those, they can't talk to you. So unfortunately, the animals can't tell you about the headache, and nobody wants to deal with the potential bowel issues for, overdosing the animal with that case. So we go very slowly with the dogs, but I have a lot of dogs for seizures as well, and anxiety and aggression. So the dog trainer, like if she's getting an animal in and the people are ready to get rid of the animal, right? And they're already paying thousands of dollars now to have the training. If the dog cannot focus, she's immediately putting them on CBD so that during the training, they calm down and can handle it. And then I have a lot of athletes, professional athletes, ECHL, and some USL League One soccer players for recovery. They're always hurt, right? And it also is helping with, especially with soccer and hockey, you worry about TBI, concussions. They're taking it to help them sleep. And for some of them, they're under a lot of pressure, right? They're professional athletes, so their body is their life. So if they can't play and they can't focus, that's literally their career. So their healing is paramount. And then I have my canna boomers, who are probably my favorite.
I love that.
I love my canna boomers. So because and some of them are, like they were the children of the 60s, right? Some of them dabbled, some of them didn't. Some of them, they'll come out to you, yeah, I never had a problem with it. And, but they don't want to be smoking it, right? Yes. We don't want to be combusting. So they're happy to take a soft gel or the tincture or, and they're the best resource you have as far as advertising too. Mm-hmm. Because, it works for them. They're bringing their 3 friends next time.
Definitely.
And that's how my business has grown. It's been more word of mouth because, even CBD companies, they're a dime a dozen now, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's lots of good ones out there now. And then how do you pick, right? How do you choose? How do you know? Mm-hmm. So, and luckily I do have contacts in the medical community as well. So like when I worked in pain management, really closely with a neurologist, I helped him titrate some patients off opiates who were sick of taking opiates. I'll work with the providers really closely. Like when patients come and say, I want to stop taking this medicine. Well, it's not just me making that decision. I said, okay, well, let's talk to your provider and tell them that you're interested in, potentially using, my product line, and we'll work out a chart for you. Let me talk, because I don't want to make a bunch of providers mad at me and just start pulling people off their medications. That's way too much liability. So, it's a conversation. And once I bring the doctor into the loop and the doctor's seeing the benefits and the outcomes, I'm making a believer out of them too. Because, a lot of providers, if they didn't learn about it and they're not sitting at home researching the endocannabinoid system and saying, well, my patients keep asking me a lot of questions about this, so let me do my own research. Some of them are, but I would say the vast majority are not. Right. We all know that doctors, if they're not in some kind of subspecialty, a GP writes for an average of 5 medications. 5. That's out of all the hundreds and hundreds of medications that are out there, they write for 5 consistently. So that shouldn't give you as a patient, and most patients don't even know that, that's, but we do, because we see the same scripts from the same providers over and over again. They very rarely wander outside their comfort zone.
Right.
So it's nice that, it is getting some acknowledgement. And I have 3 chiropractors, and I think the Board of Chiropractic isn't really on board with it. So that's not, some of them that are in private practice carry it in their office. Mm-hmm. And then if the patients want specific dosing, they just call me, or they'll pop in and see me where I'm located, or they'll, the provider will just call me up on the phone while they're still at their appointment.
Sure.
And in the one chiropractor's office, they also do, you know, acupuncture and therapeutic massage. So they'll use the topicals when they finish with the patient. And then when the patient's like, well, what was that? And then they'll show them the bottle, and then they're coming to see me to get, you know, they want more lotion or something. So it works out. And then I think the athlete component is kind of interesting. So I had no idea that my demographic of patient, you know, when I started this, I figured, oh, it's going to be people like my mom, right? It's going to be people over 65. They might have all these conditions going on. They're in a lot of pain, and no, cannabis is not going to fix their outcome. I mean, it's not going to cure her lupus, but is it going to help her give a better quality of life and be able to function on a daily basis? Yes. So that's huge. You know, the patients will tell you, this is huge for me. I have one of my favorite patients who has really bad rheumatoid arthritis. She loves to cook, and when I saw her, she couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes at a time. She actually walked in the door and took a seat and was talking to me. She's like, I'm so sorry. She said, my arthritis is so bad, I can't stand for more than 10 minutes at a time. I'm in excruciating pain. And she was actually coming in the pharmacy for something different, and had noticed the CBD products, and then struck up a conversation, and she ended up buying a bottle of tincture and trying it. And I said, I have a 30-day money back guarantee. If you use the whole bottle and tell me it does nothing for you, I will refund your money. Yeah. So for some people, that's like a win right there, because they're like, well, I was like, you really have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. I stand behind my product. Yeah. I haven't had any returns. You know, it's right. So I mean, that to me is enough feedback. And when I saw her the next month, she walked in and she stood at the counter, and she said, well, do you notice anything different? And I said, well, you're standing. Wow. She said, I can cook now. She said, you know how hard it is to chop vegetables sitting down? Have you ever tried cooking an entire meal from a chair? She said, it's near impossible, and it takes forever. She said, I am so happy. I can chop my own vegetables again. I can cook and that for her was life-changing. Just simple food prep. She was empowered. And now I see her, and she's like, I've lost 10 pounds she's just able to move more, right? Yeah. She's just because of her mobility. So, I mean, that for her is life-changing. So it's simple things. You're not going to, like I said, it doesn't mean you're going to cure their disease state, or, it's the little things that mean the world to them. And that's what puts a smile on my face when I hear those good outcomes. Yes.
So what are your favorite resources? You yourself are a major resource, but where did you go to start learning?
So the first thing when I started looking up like CBD, I was fortunate. The first website I went on was projectcbd.org, which is a great nonprofit. They have a lot of awesome information. And, that led me to, looking, and at the time there was no accredited courses, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, 5 years ago, it was like, there were courses out there and you paid for them, but they weren't necessarily accredited or anything. Mm-hmm. I did go on Greenflower Media at the time, although since then I've found, better websites, as far as like learning. Sure. So, you have the cannabis clinicians, you have cannabis nursing. Now you have the International Society of Cannabis Pharmacists. So I really like cannabisclinicians.org and cannabisnurses.org. Now there's, the International Society of Pharmacists, Cannabis Pharmacists, ISCP. They do coursework also. But as far as books, like, if you go on Amazon or your bookstore, there's Cannabis Pharmacy by Michael Backus. And I think he was on Clubhouse a couple months ago. He's actually writing an updated version to that, which is a practical guide to medical marijuana. There's a book by Patricia Frye called The Medical Marijuana Guide. She's a cannabis clinician, I believe in Virginia or Maryland. But the first book I would tell somebody to start with is by Martin Lee, which is the first book I read, which is The Social History of Marijuana. It's called Smoke Signals. Mm. And it's all about the medical, recreational, and scientific background. Even though he uses the word marijuana, and in the industry, we like to just say cannabis, because you'll learn that even marijuana has a negative connotation to it. Mm-hmm. So, when people still use it, we, professionally and medically, I just like to say cannabis, because that's a universally accepted term, but that's happened to be the title of his book. And then there's a book by Dr. David Casarett that's called Stoned, A Doctor's Case for Medical Marijuana. And there's a lot of great books out there, but those are some really big ones. And as far as, if you're looking for clinical studies or research, you can never go wrong with PubMed, clinicaltrials.gov. Those are where you're actually pulling the actual studies from and the outcome. I just saw a headline today about some study in Denmark they did particularly for arthritis. And they said, oh, well, CBD didn't statistically significantly help anybody in the study. But I didn't go into the whole study. And I was just like, well, yeah, take that with a grain of salt, because then we start getting into pulling apart the study, right?
Yes.
So that's the other fun part of being a clinician is, okay, so the study says this. Okay, well, so now let's go read all the confounders in the study.
Totally. Are you a part of any organizations cannabis related?
I'm a part of SC Normal, although my chapter here in Greenville is not that active. And I don't have the bandwidth right now to also be like heading, because for me, advocacy, that takes a lot of time and I don't have the ability, but supporting, yes. I think the SC Normal groups in Columbia and the low country of my state are a lot more active, and they're having meetings and doing things. But I mean, they're 3 and 4 hours away from me. So it's hard to, take a full day to drive down there for a meeting and come back, but they do Zoom calls as well. I am a board member of Compassionate SC, which that is all the legislation in South Carolina has pretty much been spearheaded by Jill Swing and Judy Gangham and Senator Tom Davis. And he's also what they call the Low Country, which is the coast. And he's been on the bill for South Carolina for, 8 years. They've been doing all the hard work trying to get things passed. And it'll pass the House, but not pass the Senate. And hopefully this is our year. We'll see. I've written an article for them, for their newsletter. And I've been to Columbia a couple times, not as much as I would like to. So, the advocacy is one portion. I mean, they're very excited that, oh, here's a pharmacist who is listening to what we're saying.
Right.
So advocates get excited when there's medical people supporting them, because I guess they feel like that brings a level of legitimacy to what they're saying. But then you also have like the medical naysayers, right? So I think that eventually the research is going to back everything up. There's plenty of anecdotal out there. There's plenty of research that is good. I think that the research is always a little skewed. The articles they highlight what they consider bad or not effective. But when anything good comes out, we just sweep that study under the rug. I mean,
yeah.
So cannabis has over 40,000 government studies to prove that it's bad. 40,000, that's more than any other drug, pharmaceutical out there. There's not 40,000 studies on any one pharmaceutical ever. We've studied cannabis more than anything else. And I'm pretty sure if they had that one study that definitively said how horrible cannabis is, we'd all know about it. And there isn't one, because it isn't. So to me, that speaks volumes. I don't know why it's sad that we're even still having to have this conversation, So, but needless to say, but we're all still pushing, we're still pushing the envelope. We're still trying to get people, to be aware, be open-minded, do your own research.
How can people work with you? How can they get in touch?
So I do have a Facebook and Instagram and an e-commerce website that people can contact me or email me. I answer any and all questions. My consultations are, no fee. I'm willing to, I'll always talk about the plant, give them information, whether they buy something or not, it doesn't matter. If they walk out, or I answer an email and I even planted the seed, no pun intended, that they may benefit. That's great. So the website is www.healingleafsc for South Carolina.com, or at healingleafsc, and Facebook is, it's Healing Leaf SC. I actually own both sites. I own Healing Leaf, and then I realized there's another Healing Leaf company. So I had to change it a little bit and make it just South Carolina.
Is there anything else that you want to leave with the listeners today, Dr. Jennifer?
I would just like to say that, cannabis is an amazing plant. We need to really allow for the studies to catch up to, the industry, and listen to your own body. That's probably the most important thing, because what works for someone else may not work for you. And even different brands, there's so much difference, extraction methods and growing methods, and what part of the country, you're getting something from. It's variable. So, you have to really become your own advocate. And if you're running into a wall with people who are not cannabis friendly, there's plenty of us out there who are.
Yes.
And we are willing to help you. And we're listening.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning in to 6 Degrees from Cannabis. If you connected with this episode, please share it with a friend who would benefit from hearing it too. Tap the subscribe button to be notified when the next 6 Degrees episode is released. You can find more information about holistic healing, the Follow Your Heart Oracle deck, and what I do by visiting ToriRerick.com. If you message us on Instagram at 6 Degrees from Cannabis, we'll be sure to message you back. Bliss be with you.